Hello student, good morning. I hope you all will be safe and sound. As we are discussing in the history, that is in the 9th chapter, mainly we have just talked about what about the movements and what about the organizations, associations were formed between the period of 1870s to 1947. We were talking about these all the things, like we have talked about the different kind of the sabhas which were just formed by the Indian leaders, as well as we have talked in the previous video about the Indian National Congress. Now here we have to start with freedom is our birthright. As you all know that this particular slogan has been given by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. That is, freedom is our birthright and I shall have it. So what they have given under this one, see. By the 1890s, many Indians began to raise questions about the political style of the Congress. So by the 1890s, whatever the policies mainly which were adopted by the Indian National Congress, so it was discussed and it was many of the questions were raised by the different leaders in our country. In Bengal, Maharashtra and Punjab, leaders such as Bipin Chandra Pal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Lala Lajpat Rai were beginning to explore more radical objectives and methods. So these three leaders' names they have given like in the different provinces at the time, in the Bengal, in Maharashtra as well as in Punjab. So these were known as well Bal, Lal. Like this, these were also famous, Lal, Bal, Pal. So these leaders were somewhat radical, somewhat aggressive, mean to say. And they began to raise the questioning which sort of the policies were being adopted by the Congress at that time. They criticize the moderates for their politics of prayers. Mean to say, this has been divided. So whoever the moderates were there, moderates mean to say who used to get the freedom and who used to start their things, who want to get their rights by in a peaceful manner, in a non-violence manner. But these leaders were somewhat aggressive. They just suggested that with the policy of non-violence, we can't get our freedom and we can't get our rights. Then what happens, see, and they also emphasize the importance of self-reliance and constructive work. As I have already told you, constructive work means to say by just aggressive means, by attacking means, so we can get our rights and we can do our work over there. They argue that people must rely on their own strength, not on the good intention of the government. They also told that we should have and we should also just believe on our own strength. As we are also powerful, so we must believe on it, and we should not just give our intention for the others' government, mainly here the colonial government. People must fight for Swaraj. And these radical groups, they also just told the people they must fight for their Swaraj. Swaraj means for their own country, for their own rule. Tilak raised the slogan, freedom is my birthright and I shall have it. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak, so he just raised one slogan named freedom is my birthright, that is स्वतंत्रता मेरा जन्म सिद्ध अधिकार है, मैं इसे लेकर ही रहूंगा, I shall have it, like this. Then in 1905, Viceroy Curzon partitioned Bengal. Bengal was divided in the 1905 under the Governor General, under the Viceroy Lord Curzon. At that time, Bengal was biggest province of British India and included Bihar and parts of Odisha. So when it was partitioned by the Lord Curzon, so at that time, the Bihar was also the part of it, and as well as the some parts of the Odisha, this were also under the Bengal presidency. Then the British argued for dividing Bengal for region for administrative convenience. But what did administrative convenience mean? Here it means to say why the Bengal was divided, why it was partitioned, for ruling over, for getting their own facilities, how they will control over the Bengal presidency. That is why they have partitioned it. So what does the meaning of administrative convenience here that has been given? Whose convenience did it represent? Clearly, it was closely tied to the interest of British officials and businessmen. Mainly here for their convenience means to say, for their facility means to say here, they were mainly the Britishers, they were interested and they were the British officials and the businessmen who wanted to control over the Bengal presidency. Why it is so? As you all know that lots of the production were being done in these areas. Then even So instead of removing the non-Bengal areas from the province, the government separated East Bengal and merged it with Assam. Perhaps the main British motives were to curtail the influence of Bengali politicians and to spill the Bengal people. And here, why they have done like this? They have told here, although it has been divided, separated East Bengal and it was merged with the Assam, and its main objective, main motive of the Britishers was to influence the Bengali politicians, whoever the Bengals, whoever the Indian leaders were there, who were just raising their voice against the British government, to just reduce their volume, reduce their voice over there, as well as to spill the Bengali people, and whatever the Bengali people were also raising and demanding for their rights, so for reducing their voices over there. The partition of Bengal infiltrated people all over India. All sections of Congress, the moderates and the radicals, as they may be called, opposed it. As we all know that whatever the Bengal was partition, so it made frustrated to each and every Indian, not only in this one area but all over the India. All sections of the Congress, mainly the moderates who believe on the non-violence and the radicals who believe on the violence, so they came together. And although they were opposed to each other, but they came together. Large public meetings and demonstrations were organized and novel methods of mass protest developed. So what happened after this one? Large public meetings. The public meetings were held by the Indians, and they have also done the demonstration. They have also demonstrated their power. They came on to strikes, and they organized together, and novel methods of mass protest developed. And they also just went for the protesting against the British government. The struggle that unfolded came to be known as the Swadeshi movement. That was mainly started in 1905 and 1906. That struggle, that movement, it came to be known as Swadeshi, for own country, whatever the movement they have started. That is the strongest in Bengal, but with encouraged elsewhere too. In Deltaic Andhra, for instance, it was known as that is Bande Mataram movement. So here they have given it. This movement became quite strong. It became the most strong in the Bengal region mainly, but somewhere it was very low. It was the influence of this movement was quite low. That has been given here, mainly in the deltaic areas of the Andhra, and here this movement came to be known as Bande Mataram movement. And downside you can see the peak, thousands joined the demonstration during the Swadeshi movement. How the people they took participate in the Swadeshi movement. After this one, the Swadeshi movement sought to oppose British rule and increase the ideas of self-help, Swadeshi enterprise, national education and use of Indian language. So, mainly in this one movement, what they have done, what the Indian leaders have sought over there, what they have searched, that is to oppose the British rule. They have opposed the British rule and increased the idea of self-help. So they just encourages, they just inspire themselves to help themselves, and Swadeshi enterprise and whatever the Swadeshi things were there at the time, whatever the things were be produced in our own country, so these all the things must be used by us. And national education, the education must be in our own language and as well as use of Indian language. So whatever the Indian language was there, we can use it. To fight for Swaraj, the radicals advocated mass mobilization and boycott of British institution and goods. So as you all know that, in this one what happened, there is also one slogan in Hindi, that is Videshi Vastuon ka Bahiskar. What are the foreign goods were there? Well, these were imported in our country by the British officials at the time. So we have to boycott it. We have to just boycott means we have to neglect these all the things. We have to adopt our own things which we have made in our own country. Some individuals also began to suggest that revolutionary violence would be necessary to overthrow British rule. Some of the individuals, whoever the leaders were there, they also began to suggest, they also suggested to Indians mainly, we have to take the revolutionary violence. We have to go for the revolt, and it may be turned into the violence as well. That would necessary to overthrow the British rule, to remove, to just remove totally, to root out the rule of the Britishers from the country. Then the opening decades of the 20th century were marked by the developments as well. So the opening decades mean to say the starting in the beginning of the 20th century, it was marked by the other developments as well. Some other developments that took place in our country. A group of Muslim landlords and Nawabs formed the All Indian Muslim League at Dhaka, that is in 1906. So some of the leaders, some of the Muslim landlords as well as some of the Nawabs, what they did, they formed a party over there, that is Indian Muslim League in Dhaka in 1906. The league, this particular movement and this particular party, the league, supported the partition of Bengal, and it desired separate electorates for Muslims, a demand considered by the government in 1909. So what happened after the partition of the Bengal? Whatever the Muslim League was there, so they just asked to the British government to make the separate seats for the Muslims in the government. That is why, that is in 1999 at that time, Lord Minto, who was the viceroy of our country at the time, so what he did, he represented the idea of the reservation for people on the basis of religion. Okay, then after, some seats in the councils were now reserved for Muslims who would be elected by Muslim voters. So that is why here they have given for the council, for the government. Here some of the seats were now reserved for the Muslims, and these were elected by the Muslim voters. This tempted politicians to gather a following by that is distributing favors to their own religious groups. Then what happened? Whoever the politicians, Indian politicians were there, so what they did, to gather a following, they gather the people for distributing favors of their own religious groups. Like if Hindu leader is there, he was getting the support of the Hindu people. If the Muslim will be there, so it will get the favor of the Muslims. Meanwhile, the Congress split in 1907. So here, what happens, the Congress was also partitioned. It was divided into two groups. The moderates were opposed to the use of boycott. They felt that it involved the use of force. So whoever the moderates were there, in the moderates and in the radicals, so whoever the moderates were there, so what they told, they opposed to the use of boycott. Whatever the things were being boycotted by the Indians at the time, they opposed it. They felt that it involved the use of force. After the split of the Congress came to be dominated by the moderates, with Tilak followers functioning from outside. So whoever the followers of the Tilak and whoever the other leaders with the Bal Gangadhar Tilak, so what they did, they just work, their followers, they work from the outside. The two groups are reunited in December 1915. Whoever the two groups were made over there of the Indian National Congress, they again reunited in December 1915. Next year, the Congress and the Muslim League signed the historical Lucknow Pact and decided to work together for representative government in the country. So, in the year of 1916, one agreement was being done between Muslim League and the Indian National Congress. So this pact came to be known as Lucknow Pact, which were held in the Lucknow, and they decided to work together. Both the parties, they decided to work together for representative government in the country. Then the growth of mass nationalism. What happened, see, under this one? After 1919, the struggle against British rule gradually became a mass movement. Mean to say, after 1919, so the people, most of the people, they took the participate in the different kind of the movements involving peasants, tribals, students, and women in large number, and occasionally factory workers as well. So these all the persons, like the farmers also took the participate, tribals, students, even the female, the women, they also took the participate, and as well as the factory workers, whoever the factory workers were there, occasionally they also give their present, and they also supported the movements. Certain business groups also began to actively support the Congress in 1920. And several, whoever the business groups were there, whoever the wealthier sections of the society at that time in India, they also supported Congress in 1920s. Why was this so? Why this one? That has been given downside. The First World War altered the economic and political situation in India. As we all know that First World War that took place in all over the world between the period of 1914 to 1919. So during this time, it just changed the situation of economically and politically in our country. It led to a huge rise in the defense expenditure of the government of India. So as we all know that we were under the Britishers and the Britain, the England, it was also indulged in the First World War. So what happened? So it led a huge rise in the defense expenditure. Whatever the defense related things were needed, so lots of the money were spent over it. The government in turn increased tax on individual incomes and business profits. So the British government, how they got it? So for getting more and more income, more and more revenue, so they just imposed the high taxes on the Indians, mainly on individual incomes as well as the business profits. Increased military expenditure and the demands for war supplies led to a sharp rise in prices, which created great difficulties for the common people. So as we all know that, as the expenditure of the military, it increased, and the demand for the war supply, it also rise. So definitely it just rises in the prices, which created a great difficulties for the common people. On the other hand, business groups reaped fabulous profit from the war. So whoever at that time, the business groups were there, they got the fabulous profits from the war because they had to produce more and more things for supplying in the war. As you have seen in chapter 7, the war created a demand for industrial goods like jute bags, cloth, rails, and caused a decline of impact from other countries into India. As we have already read about the Tisco company as well. At that time, whatever the things were being produced during the First World War, so lots of the demands from the India and lots of the things were being exported after this one from our country. So Indian industries expanded during the war, and Indian business groups began to demand greater opportunities for development. So at that time, the Indian industries they expand their production during the war, as well as whoever the business groups in our country, so they also demanded for greater opportunities for the development. The war also led the British to expand their army villages that is pressurized to supply soldiers for an alien cause. For alien cause means to say for the Britishers. Here, as well as for just expanding their army, for increasing the number of the military persons over there. So whoever the villages were there in our country, so the people were pressurized for supplying of the soldiers for the Britishers. A large number of soldiers were sent to serve abroad. So large number of the soldiers, they went to the other countries for serving. Many returned after the war with an understanding of the ways in which imperialist power were exploiting the people of Asia and Africa, and with a desire to oppose colonial rule in India. So after serving in the foreign countries, after serving in the different countries, these soldiers, they really understood whatever the policies, whatever the tortureness, whatever the exploitation were being done with them. Mainly these soldiers from the Africa and Asia, and they came to be known why the British, the colonial rule, mainly the British rule, why should not it oppose? Means they just supported to oppose the colonial rule, mainly the British rule in our country. Furthermore, in 1917, there was a revolution in Russia. So Russian Revolution that took place in Russia in the year of 1917. News about peasants and workers struggle, the idea of socialism circulated widely, inspiring Indian nationalists. And whatever the things, whatever the in the Russian Revolution, whatever the initiatives were taken by the Russian leaders at the time, this was also just initiated by and inspired by the Indian nationalists. Like they have given here about the socialism, mean to say there must be a classless society. Everyone must be treated equally. Then they have given here about the advent of Mahatma Gandhi. Here you will come to know when the Mahatma Gandhi arrived to our country. In 1915 he arrived to our country, then he started the movements, its satyagrahas in our country. In this, It is in these circumstances that Mahatma Gandhi emerged as a mass leader. As you all know that the circumstances, the situations in our country, that was different when he came to our country, when he returned from South Africa to India, so the condition of the country was quite different. As you may know, Gandhi, aged 46, arrived in India in 1915 from South Africa. And having led Indians in the country in non-violent marches against racist restrictions, he was already a respected leader known internationally. As he has faced the same problem, the racism problem, which were discriminated, that person was also discriminated on in South Africa on the basis of race. On the basis of race mean to say here color, means like tu gora main kala like this. So the racism were there, apartheid system were in South Africa. So you might have heard the great leader of the South Africa, that is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela has done a fabulous work over there to just remove the racism from South Africa. So that is why he also took some initiatives in the South Africa. That is why internationally he was very famous and respected leader. His South African campaign had brought him in contact with the various types of Indians, Hindus, Muslims, Parsis and Christians, Gujaratis, Tamils and North Indians and upper caste merchants and lawyers and workers. So, as he was respected and internationally, he was very famous. So, whatever the in South Africa, whatever the campaigns were started by him, so he came with the contact of the different kind of the societies, groups, different kind of the people, like Hindu, Muslims, Parsis, Christian, Gujarati, Tamil, North Indians, and upper caste merchants, and lawyers and workers. Mahatma Gandhi spent his first year in India traveling throughout the country, understanding the people, their need, and the overall situation. He spent his first year by traveling throughout the country and to knowing the situation of the people. His earliest that is intervention were in the local movements of the Champaran. As you all know that about the Champaran, Khela and Ahmedabad. What happened in Champaran? Champaran, as the peasants were forced over there to grow indigo and opium over there. So the farmers, they invited to that person in the Champaran, mainly in Bihar, and he just started the movement over there. Then in Khela Satyagraha, then in Ahmedabad mill strike, where he came to in contact with the Rajendra Prasad and Vallabh Bhai Patel. In Ahmedabad, he led a successful mill workers strike in the year of 1918. Let us now focus in some details on the movements organized between 1919 and 1922. So here, at first they have given about the Rowlatt Satyagraha, that we will discuss in the next video. Okay?